The snow was coming down hard on Highway 11 when my brother's headlights caught me. I was walking on the shoulder, holding my 3-year-old against my chest, her face buried in my neck, her mittens soaked through. Every time a transport truck blew past us, the wind nearly knocked me sideways. I kept one hand on her back and one arm out for balance, crunching through the gray slush at the edge of the road. Then I heard tires skid and a horn. His SUV pulled hard onto the shoulder about 20 feet ahead of me, and he was out the door before it fully stopped. "Ivy!" His voice cracked over the wind. "Where is your car?" I looked at him. I hadn't cried yet. I didn't know why. Maybe I'd used it all up months ago. "My husband has the keys," I said. "He says I'm not safe to drive." The silence between us lasted maybe 2 seconds. Then he grabbed Sophie from my arms, wrapped his jacket around her, and opened the back door. "Get in," he said. That was all. "Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. I love knowing who's out there with me." The heat inside the car was almost painful after the cold. My fingers started to burn as the feeling came back into them. Sophie had fallen asleep almost instantly against the booster seat my brother keeps in his truck because he takes her every other Sunday, or he used to, before my husband said the visits were disrupting her routine. I stared at the back of her head and felt my whole body start to shake. Not from cold. The adrenaline was leaving, and what it left behind wasn't relief. It was shame. Deep, ugly shame. The kind that sits in your sternum and doesn't move. My brother didn't look at me. He pulled back onto the highway and drove. After a few minutes, he said quietly, "How long has this been going on?" I opened my mouth and closed it again. 8 months, I said finally. Maybe longer, if I'm honest. He exhaled through his nose. Slow and controlled, the way he gets when he's really furious, but doesn't want to show it. "Why didn't you call me?" That's the question, isn't it? Why didn't I call? I've asked myself that every single day for 8 months, and the answer is always the same, and it never sounds right out loud. But I needed him to understand, really understand, not just be angry on my behalf. "Because it didn't look like anything," I said. "That's how it works. It doesn't start looking like a crisis. It starts looking like help." It started with his mother. She came up from Barrie the week after Sophie was born, which was fine. Expected, even. She's a grandmother. She wanted to meet her granddaughter. I understood that. What I didn't understand was that she was planning to stay. She said she wanted to take the night feeds so I could sleep. I was so tired I cried with relief. I thanked her. I actually thanked her. Then she started reorganizing the kitchen, just to be more efficient. Then she mentioned gently that I was putting Sophie down too late and that's why she was fussy. Then she started commenting on what I was eating, whether I was getting enough iron, whether I was exercising enough given that I'd been cleared by my midwife. Every comment was wrapped in this warm, concerned voice. Every single one. And if I said anything, if I pushed back even slightly, my husband would wait until she'd left the room and say, "She's just trying to help, Ivy. You've been really anxious lately. It worries me." That was the other thing, the anxiety narrative. It started around month 2. Anytime I said something that contradicted the version of reality they were building, I was anxious. I was overwhelmed. I needed rest, not decisions. My husband started handling all our finances to reduce my mental load. He was an account manager at a financial planning firm, so it made sense on paper. I was on maternity leave. Money was tight. He said he'd streamline everything. I said okay. I said thank you. I didn't realize I'd handed him the wheel until I tried to pay for something at Loblaws and my debit card declined. I asked him about it that night. He said he'd consolidated everything into one account for efficiency and that I could ask him when I needed money for groceries. Ask him for grocery money. I heard myself say okay, and I stood in our kitchen and I felt the temperature of the water rise by 1 degree. My brother's hands tightened on the wheel when I told him that part. "Keep going," he said. The car registration went next. My car, a 2021 Honda CR-V that I'd bought before we got married, that was in my name, that I'd made every single payment on for 2 years. He took over the insurance because it was cheaper on his plan. Fine. Then he started keeping the keys on his hook by the door, not mine, because he was worried about me running errands when I was exhausted. When I pointed out that Sophie's pediatric appointment was across town and I needed the car, he said he'd drive us. He always drove us. Every appointment, every park trip, every coffee I thought I was going to get alone. He was always there. I didn't call it control. I called it involvement. I called it him being hands-on. 6 months in, I tried to drive to my friend's place in Sudbury for a weekend. Just 2 days. Sophie and me, just to breathe. He said he was worried about the roads. It was February, and that was fair. But then it was March, and the roads were fine, and he said he was worried I'd be exhausted driving that far alone. In April, I went to get the keys and they were gone. He said he put them somewhere safe because I'd been so scattered lately, and he didn't want me driving in that state. I stood in the front hallway for a long time after that. I didn't leave because of Sophie. That's the part people don't understand when they hear a story like this from the outside. They say, "Why didn't you just go?" And the answer is that they had already told me, very clearly, in 100 small ways, that if I tried to leave without a plan, I would lose her. His mother had made comments about my mental health to my own mother at Christmas. My husband had a lawyer in the family, his uncle, and he mentioned it once, casually, the way you mention something you want the other person to hear. He said, "Custody disputes are brutal. Judges really look at stability. I'd hate for things to get messy." He said it like he was worried. He said it like he was on my side. So I waited. I picked the lock slowly, quietly, while they were watching. I found a pink accordion folder at the bottom of a diaper bag his mother never touched. She thought cloth diapering was unhygienic, and I started filling it. Bank statements I photographed when my husband left his laptop open. Texts I screenshotted before he checked my phone each night. A note I kept in the Notes app under a title that looked like a grocery list. Almond milk, blueberries, evidence. I wrote down dates. Incidents. The exact words he used when he explained why I couldn't have access to my own checking account. I was waiting for a day when Sophie and I could walk out and never have to look back. I didn't plan on it being in a snowstorm. I didn't plan on walking 3 kilometers on the shoulder of Highway 11. But he'd taken the car keys that morning and I had found a moment, a real one. While he and his mother were at the back of the property and the front door was unlocked, and Sophie's snowsuit was right there on the hook. So I went. I put her on my hip and I went. My brother pulled off the highway onto a side road and put the truck in park. He turned to look at me. He's 41. He's a contractor. Builds houses, practical, keeps everything in his head. He's not a man who cries, but his eyes were wet. "Ivy," he said. I saw it at Thanksgiving. I went still. The way you looked at him before you answered anything, like you were calculating, like you were checking your answer before you gave it. He stopped, cleared his throat. I told myself it wasn't my place, that you were just tired, that it was new parent stuff and I didn't want to overstep. He pressed his knuckles against his mouth for a second. "I left you there. I'm sorry. I had not expected that. I had expected anger. At him, at the situation, but not this. Not his guilt. It hit me differently than anything had in months. I reached over and put my hand on his arm. "You're here now," I said, "but I need you to know I didn't stay because I had no choice. I stayed because I was building the way out." I pulled the accordion folder from the bottom of my bag. I handed it to him. He went through it slowly. 3 minutes of silence except for Sophie's small snoring sounds from the back seat. Then he closed the folder and said, "We need to go back and get your things, tonight." The house looked different when we pulled in. It always looked fine from the outside, a 2-story in Huntsville, good neighborhood, my mother-in-law's car in the driveway, and the porch lights on like everything was normal. My husband and his mother were in the living room. He was on his phone. She had a glass of wine. They looked like a Pottery Barn catalog. My mother-in-law saw us through the window first. She met us at the door with her warmest voice. "Oh, look who's back." She smiled at my brother like he was a guest at a dinner party. "Come in, it's freezing. Can I get you something warm?" My brother didn't acknowledge the offer. He looked at my husband. "Her car keys," he said. "Now." My husband stood up slowly. He has a way of doing that, taking his time, making you feel like the impatient one, the unreasonable one. "Let's all take a breath," he said. "Ivy's been struggling. We've been concerned about her. The keys are a safety measure, you can understand that. She walked 3 kilometers on Highway 11 in a snowstorm with a 3-year-old, my brother said. His voice didn't rise. That was the frightening part. "Give her the keys." "This is my house," my husband said, "and she is my wife. And if she's going to take my daughter somewhere without—" "Sophie is her daughter," my brother said. "And if you don't hand over those keys right now, I'm going to make a call. I know the detachment commander in this county. We grew up together, and I have in my hands documentation of financial control, restricted movement, and a forged credit application. Do you want to talk about what happens next, or do you want to hand over the keys?" The room went very quiet. My mother-in-law laughed, that short, bright laugh she uses when she's actually frightened. "He's exaggerating," she said. "There's no forged anything. Ivy, you're not well, sweetheart. You need. Don't." My brother didn't look at her. He kept his eyes on my husband. Keys. I didn't wait. I went up the stairs with Sophie on my hip, moving fast, not looking at the photos on the wall, not looking at the bedroom where I had spent 8 months getting smaller and smaller. I pulled the duffel bag from the top shelf, the one I'd half-packed 3 weeks ago, and then shoved back when I lost my nerve. Sophie's things, her elephant stuffy, her snow pants, her Dora toothbrush, her health card. My things, my SIS card, my passport, my laptop, the folder. I didn't fold anything. I didn't think. I moved. My brother was at the top of the stairs when I came out of the bedroom. He was facing the hall, arms crossed, not letting anyone past. "Got everything?" he said. "Almost." I ducked into the small office at the end of the hall, the one my husband kept locked, mostly, but he'd left it open that morning. I grabbed the manila envelope I'd seen 2 weeks ago and had photographed but hadn't been able to take. Documents. A loan agreement I didn't remember signing. I grabbed it and went. We were back downstairs in 4 minutes. My husband was standing by the front door with his arms crossed. His mother was beside him, united. "You're not taking her," he said. "I'll call the police right now." "Please do," my brother said pleasantly. "That saves me the trouble." There was a long pause. No one moved. Then my brother stepped forward and opened the front door. He looked at me. I walked through it. I didn't look at my husband. I didn't look at the kitchen, where I'd cried with relief every time someone else fed Sophie so I could sleep, not understanding that I was trading my independence for those extra hours. I walked out into the cold and the snow was still falling, and Sophie reached up and touched a snowflake on my cheek like it was the most interesting thing in the world. The drive to my brother's place in Bracebridge took 40 minutes. Sophie fell asleep again almost immediately. I held the folder on my lap and watched the highway lights. When we got there, my brother made tea and I spread everything on his kitchen table. I thought, in some abstract way, that the financial stuff was bad. I hadn't understood how bad. My car, the Honda I'd bought myself, paid myself, registered in my name. He'd sold it 6 weeks ago to a dealer in North Bay. I found the bill of sale in the manila envelope. $18,500. Dated the day after he told me the keys were somewhere safe. He'd sold my car and used the money to pay off a line of credit. I looked at the account number on the transfer. It wasn't our joint account. It was his mother's. My brother read it twice. He set it down. He said nothing for a moment. "There's more," I said. There was. A personal loan for $22,000 from a private lender. The borrower on the agreement was my name, my SIN number, my signature. Except it wasn't, not exactly. It was close. It was someone who'd studied how I write my name. I tried to log into my online banking on my phone. Wrong password. I tried again. Locked. I called the automated line and entered my information. "The balance of your account ending in 4471 is $0.12. I put the phone down on the table. We sat with that for a minute. Sophie was asleep in my brother's spare room on a bed he'd made up with a flannel sheet. The furnace ticked. Outside, the snow had stopped. "This isn't a marriage problem," my brother said finally. "This is fraud." When they showed up the next morning, and they did show up, my husband and his mother, both of them, at 8:15 on a Saturday, knocking like nothing was wrong, I answered the door myself. My brother stood behind me, but I didn't need him in front. I handed my husband an envelope. Inside was everything: the bill of sale for my car, the loan agreement with the forged signature, annotated with a note from the financial paralegal my brother had called the night before, the bank transfers, a timeline, 11 pages. "I've already spoken with someone at the Huntsville detachment," I said. "You have until Monday to contact your lawyer. If the full amount, the car, the loan, the account, isn't addressed by then, this file goes to the Crown Attorney's office." He opened the envelope. He read the first page. His mother tried to say something about me being confused, about this being a misunderstanding, about how much they loved Sophie and wanted what was best for her. I closed the door. Not loudly, just firmly, like someone who has decided. 4 months later, I signed a lease on a 2-bedroom apartment in Gravenhurst. Ground floor, laundry in unit, a little backyard with a fence that Sophie can run around in when the weather comes back. I painted her room yellow. She chose the color, stood in the paint aisle at Home Hardware, and pointed at the swatch without any hesitation. I thought, that's her. That's who she is when nobody's managing her. I got my CRA direct deposit set back up. I got a secured credit card to start rebuilding. I got a job offer, part-time at a nonprofit, doing administrative coordination, which isn't glamorous, but it's mine, and it pays. And when they direct deposit my first paycheck, I sat in my car in the parking lot and cried for a while. My husband is facing charges. The process is slow and unglamorous, and nothing like how they show it on TV. His mother was named as a co-beneficiary of the fraudulent loan, which matters even if the outcome is still being sorted out. My lawyer, my own lawyer, one I found myself, one I pay, tells me to be patient. Sophie asks for her uncle every week now. He comes on Sundays and brings Timbits and lets her watch whatever she wants and doesn't reorganize anything. I wasn't weak. I want anyone who's reading this or hearing this to know that. The waiting looked like weakness from the outside, and I know that. Someone will say, "Why didn't you call sooner? Why didn't you leave the first time he took the keys?" And I understand the question. I really do. But the answer is that I was never passive. I was watching. I was building. I was choosing the moment carefully because my daughter was the variable I couldn't get wrong. I didn't walk out of that house with nothing. I walked out with Sophie and the folder and 4 years of knowing exactly who I am under pressure. The apartment smells like fresh paint and Sophie's shampoo. There's a crack in the kitchen ceiling I've been meaning to patch. The rent is mine to pay, and mine alone, and I have never in my life felt so purely okay about something. I'm not grateful for what I survived, but I'm not going to let it be the last thing I am, either. There's something I keep coming back to, months later, standing at my kitchen window watching Sophie run circles in the backyard. The way it all started with someone handing me something I needed. Sleep. Help with the finances. A break. It didn't feel like a trap because traps don't announce themselves. They feel, at first, like relief. I think about the choices that led me to that highway shoulder. Not just his choices, mine too. The moment I said, okay, when I should have asked questions. The moment I handed over access to my own account because I was tired and it seemed easier. I'm not saying that makes what happened my fault. It doesn't. But I've had to be honest with myself about how a smart person ends up somewhere like that. Because understanding it is the only way to make sure I never end up there again. What I know now is that the people who took things from me were counting on one thing: that I would confuse endurance with helplessness, that I would mistake staying quiet for having nothing left. They read me wrong, and that miscalculation is what undid them in the end. Every action has a consequence that follows it as surely as shadow follows light. Not because the universe is keeping score, but because choices have weight, and weight lands somewhere eventually. His choice to forge my signature landed on a desk at the Crown Attorney's office. Her choice to accept money that wasn't hers landed in a file with her name on it. And my choice, The slow, careful, unglamorous choice to document everything while pretending I had no plan landed Sophie and me in a yellow bedroom in Gravenhurst that smells like fresh paint. My brother showed up not because he was a hero, but because he had stayed honest with himself. He saw something at Thanksgiving and he named it to himself, even if he waited too long to name it to me. That honesty, the willingness to look at something uncomfortable and call it what it actually is, that's not a small thing. It's the whole thing. It's what separated the people in that story who saw clearly from the ones who built an entire architecture of justification around what they were doing. I think about what it takes to survive something like this with yourself intact. It's not toughness in the way people usually mean it. It's not gritting your teeth. It's not performing strength. It's something quieter. It's keeping your own counsel when everyone around you is telling you that your counsel can't be trusted. It's maintaining, somewhere in the very back of yourself, a clear record of what is real. I kept that record. In a notes app that looked like a grocery list. In a pink accordion folder at the bottom of a diaper bag. In the part of my mind I didn't let them touch. Sophie doesn't know any of this yet. Someday she will, in the version I choose to tell her. And what I want her to know isn't that the world is full of people who will try to take things from her. She'll figure that out. What I want her to know is that clarity is something you build on purpose. That decency, real decency, not the performed kind, means you don't use someone's exhaustion against them. That when you're in a situation that keeps asking you to make yourself smaller, the most powerful thing you can do is refuse. Quietly, strategically, on your own timeline. The crack in my kitchen ceiling is still there. I keep meaning to patch it. But some mornings I look up at it and I think, this is mine to fix or leave. And that, just that, is everything.